5 p.m. You have that assignment that you've been putting off for the longest time right now because you keep telling yourself that I still have time. But this time it's different because that assignment is due tomorrow. You tell yourself, okay, it's time to get serious now. You open your laptop, you're about to start working, but you quickly check your notifications. From checking a simple hi message on WhatsApp, you find yourself scrolling on TikTok, and then you're like, I just need to quickly catch up on my favorite anime, which then leads to you catching up on a lot of animes, which eventually then leads to you getting hungry, and you're like, you can't study on a hungry stomach, so you decide to go cook. And by the time everything is said and done, it's 12 a.m. and you're staring at a blank page. Well, if you've been in this situation before or something similar, you are probably suffering from something called the procrastination spell. The thing about this spell is that it's actually quite special. It's almost like you tell yourself consequences be damned until the consequences happen and you're like, oh my god, then you feel guilty. Things started to change when I started to learn about how the psychology of procrastination actually works. And in my search, I discovered 5 spell breakers that can help you, because it helped me, break the spell of procrastination. Now, the first spell breaker is to change your framing of the task. The thing is that most times we are actually not lazy. The reason why we procrastinate is actually because we are running away from a threat. Now, I'm sure you're wondering how this works. Now, if you have an assignment with a looming deadline, and every single time you think about the fact that you have an assignment and you haven't done anything, it creates a stress response in your brain. And this stress response, your brain interprets it as a threat. There's a part of your brain called the amygdala, also known as your lizard brain, that is in charge of all things fear and threat related. The amygdala is completely disconnected from your neocortex. Now, what is your neocortex? Your neocortex is basically the part of your brain that deals with your logical, conscious thinking. This is basically the part of your brain that deals with common sense. When the amygdala takes over, common sense goes out the window. That's almost the same thing that's happening with your brain when you think about that assignment. Your amygdala hijacks your normal reasoning. Why I say you should change your framing is because basically breaking it down. Now, the reason why that task is giving you so much stress is because it's not broken down. You're still seeing it as this gigantic mountain. But if you were to actually break it down into its smallest parts, you would actually find that it would actually not create the same stress reactions that you initially had while you were seeing it as this monstrous thing you need to climb. Now, how do you do this? Let's say you need to write down a 5,000 word essay. A good way to start is by breaking 5,000 into 1,000. That's even too much. Breaking 1,000 into just 50 words. The thing is that if you were to do this, breaking it down, you will actually see that essay for what it really is. It is just a string of sentences. That task loses its monstrous effect over your mind, and then it's not able to cause the amygdala reactions, which leads to your common sense going out the window and you spending 5 hours watching anime instead of you doing what you know needs to be done. Now, another spell breaker is understanding that life is not that deep. Now, like I said before, people do not procrastinate because they are lazy. Sometimes the reason why we procrastinate is because we tend to care too much. This exact thing happened to me like a few months ago when I was preparing for a presentation. Before actually starting work on my presentation, I was so concerned about how my group mates will take the presentation when I did not even have a presentation to present. When I actually realized this, I realized I was going through something called analysis paralysis, where you are thinking about a lot of things but not really doing anything that will help you to get the thing you're actually looking for. Thank God I actually caught myself in this loop when I eventually convinced myself that this task, preparing this presentation, is actually not that deep. I eventually started having fun with the whole presentation, and while I was presenting it, I felt my group mates also enjoyed the presentation. Maybe some of you right now might be like, I'm not presenting to my group mates. In that case, wasting your time analyzing will be better spent actually creating good work that you yourself would enjoy. Now, the next spell breaker is burning all bridges. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, the thing is that when you are bored enough, you will do virtually almost anything aside from cutting your hand to relieve yourself of that boredom. Now, there was a study done on a group of college students, specifically the University of California, on a thinking exercise. So they basically told these college students to sit down for 15 minutes and just think. And while they were thinking, like in complete boredom, like no external stimulations like their phone or stuff like that, they had the option to shock themselves. Now, you would think it's just 15 minutes. Like, how bad could it be? Like, stay there for 15 minutes and you go. Now, what was actually eventually discovered was that 67% of the male participants actually opted to shock themselves within that 15 minutes than to actually sit down and think. Now, that actually just goes to tell you how humans dislike boredom. Now, if you were to put yourself in a situation where you burnt all bridges of distractions like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, basically going cold turkey, you will be bored enough that even your assignment might actually turn to something that you genuinely want to do. It's almost like if every day you go to a 5-star restaurant and for some reason you find yourself stranded on some abandoned island, a bowl of plain rice will actually mean a lot to you compared to when you were surrounded by lobsters and shrimps. And if you're interested in the article about the study, it's actually in the description below. It's a really interesting read. Now, the fourth spell breaker is changing your habits. Now, what do I mean by changing your habits? Most times we may see ourselves as procrastinators, but the truth is that you are actually not a procrastinator. You just have a habit of procrastinating. If you perform an action long enough, that action will eventually turn into a habit. And the thing is that all habits have a 3-step pattern of operation. The first is the cue, the second is the routine of the action, and the third is the reward. Now, in the case of procrastination, the cue, basically the trigger of procrastination, it's usually the stress we feel. Now, when we are stressed, we then get into the next stage of the cycle, which is the action or the routine, which is to pick up your phone or to do something else aside from whatever you are procrastinating from, which eventually leads to a reward, which is the dopamine you get when you actually scroll through Instagram or TikTok. Now, if we were to modify that habit, we could actually tinker our way into becoming masters of task doing instead of master procrastinators. Now, how do you do this? Like I said before, the cue to the habit of procrastination is the stress response. Now, whenever you think about that assignment or something that you don't want to do and you get that stress response, the next step, instead of picking up your phone or looking for some sort of distraction to distract yourself, you could use this simple trick, which is the 3-2-1 hack. When you know you need to do something but you don't want to do it, you basically count 3, 2, 1 and you just go up and do it. Now, it actually does sound a bit stupid, but it's so stupidly simple that it actually works most times. Now, how does this work? Now, when you are facing a situation where you have that stress response and you want to pick up your phone and you actually count backwards, and that action of counting is actually bringing your neocortex back online and prevents you from actually falling into the problem of the amygdala hijacking. When you are also counting, it creates some kind of momentum. Now, when you have started counting, it actually tricks your mind into thinking that you have already started an action. That momentum that you had generated when you started counting from 3 actually creates a kind of push to make you do what you need to do when you need to do it. You can try it for a while and just see how it plays out in your life. Now, the next spell breaker is knowing your why. Now, Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how." At the end of the day, being really clear about why something is important to you will help you endure whatever challenge that you might be facing in completing that task. Being clear on how that exam is important to you achieving your goals will help you actually go through the struggles of studying, will actually help you to resist the temptations to go out partying where you know you have an exam the next day. Being clear on your why will actually help you to exercise even when you do not feel like it, to keep on pursuing your goals even when the going gets tough. And guys, if you really enjoyed this video, I think you're going to like a video about how you can make your good habits stick. I've said a few stuff about habits here, but in this video, I went into detail on how you can actually truly utilize the power of habits in your studying. And guys, like always, remember to always keep it real.